Today, we're going to talk about a situation that many job seekers face, which is an opportunity that either is going to be crappy or is just going to be, eh. And how do you decide if you should take it or not? Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach. And I have faced that situation. And it's a tough one because you may need a job. You may really want to get out of an organization that's not fitting anymore. And the opportunity is not what you exactly want. And you have to decide, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? So today I want to go through how you might want to think about that, and I'll give you, my particular situation where I faced the exact same thing and how I made that decision to actually take that job and what I did after that. So there are a few things that you should be thinking about as you're deciding, whether you should take this job or not. And usually one of the big ones is going to be compensation and benefits. And, people have to pay bills. And so you have to think about, does this particular job actually allow you to do that? If you have been unemployed for a while, you've put, you know, bills on your credit cards and you're running out of money, then that can be really important to have some money coming in. So that would be one thing, but maybe also benefits, that you need to have family members covered for insurance, for example. So those are things that you need to take into account when you're making that decision. But those aren't the only things because a job is more than that. So another thing you need to look at is, does this job actually advance your career in some way? So, one of the things you need to do then is think about, well, where do I want to go with my career? And is this a step that will actually help me? Could I be getting, skills, new skills that other roles won't provide that would be helpful for my career? Could it be that I will expand my network? And that will be really helpful for my career because of the people in this particular organization, or maybe it's a new industry. So that could be helpful for you, even if the job itself is not great. So think about that. Another thing to think about is really, does it match your strengths and your interests? That's really important because you want to do well in a role, but if it goes against what you naturally do well or what your interests are, then that's always going to be a struggle. So you want to kind of weigh that. Is it going to be able to help you in that regard? Another thing you want to think about is who will be your boss, because sometimes you can endure a not so great job if you have a good boss. That was the case in one of my jobs where it was not a great fit for me, but I did have a really good boss, and the boss understood my challenges, and that made me feel better about working there. So that's something to think about as well. Another thing is, culture environment. Now, if you, for example, are have small children and this job gives you flexibility to go to school events and other things, that might be really important to you, maybe even over that it is a job that really you're interested in. So you have to think about culture, environment. Maybe it's a mission-driven company that appeals to you, but there's other issues. So think about that as well. The last thing to think about is risk and stability. So there's a risk to moving and there's a risk to staying wherever you are. And that it could mean also, if you're unemployed, staying unemployed. So you have to think about that as well. Are you able to continue where you are? Is that feasible for you? Or is it just too awful where you are now and you have to make a change even if it's not optimal? So it could be you're, running out of money. It could be that you're in a toxic work environment currently, and that's really detrimental to your mental health. These are all things you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about how to evaluate the job and whether it makes sense for you. If you find this content helpful, I always appreciate you giving it a like, and I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. It really helps. So we covered what to think about, and I have 5 questions to ask yourself that are really important so that you can really define what is important in your situation and the reality of what you're going to walk into. So, the first question you should ask yourself is, what am I solving for? What is the move to this organization going to fix? Is it going to fix because I'm unemployed? Is it going to fix because it's in a new industry and I want to learn that? Is it a fix because I have a bad manager and I need a better manager? Whatever it is going to fix, and it could be multiple things, you need to understand, does this role actually do that? Okay. The second thing you want to ask yourself is, will it make me more marketable? Careers are long, and every step you take should help you to your ultimate goal, whatever that is. So, does this step make sense for you, for your career? Will it actually move you forward? Will it move you sideways? Or will it move you back? You'll need to decide if whichever is the case for you, and that can be part of your decision making. The third thing you have to ask yourself, are there deal breakers in this role with this organization, or will it just make me uncomfortable? Because there are trade offs in any job. But many of us do have deal breakers, and we should know that ahead of actually even starting a job search, because you know that that's not going to work for you. So, what are your deal breakers? And does this particular organization, this role, are they deal breakers for you? Or is it just something that you're just not really keen about, but you could tolerate it? So, think about that. The fourth question to ask yourself is it possible for me to change something bad into something okay or good? Now, I don't want this to be wishful thinking on your part, because there's a lot of people, especially achievers, who think, well, I can just change this. And sometimes you can, but often you can't, especially if it's a cultural thing. That's embedded into that organization, and one person is not able to change that. But there may be some things you can change once in your role, and will that make it better for you? So that's something to think about. And then the fifth question is, if you were to stay at this organization for a year, would that actually help you or hurt you? Important, because we can't only look at what immediately is going to impact us, but we need to look at future. So take that into account. Ask yourself these 5 questions. Hopefully, it will lead you to the right answer for you. So you've asked yourself those 5 questions. So, how do you evaluate what to do? Because that's really the most important thing. Well, I would say, if it solves one pressing issue for you and there is one significant upside for you, then that is probably a yes for you. Okay. When I talked about my particular situation, the pressing issue was health insurance. I was going to be covered, so that was a good thing. And I had a really good boss. So it was a yes for me because of that, even though it wasn't a job that I was very enthusiastic about. In fact, I was kind of dreading it. But those two things were helpful for me to understand, to get me over the finish line and say yes to that. Now, when should you say no? Well, you should say no when the multiple things are misaligned. Like, you can just tick down everything that's not going to work for you. That's going to be a problem from day one. You're going to spend a lot of time in stress, angst, frustration, maybe even anger. And that's not really helpful, because you will have to turn around and go start looking for a new job. Sometimes it's better to keep the momentum with your job search than to stall it with a new job and then have to restart. The third thing is a pause. And the pause is because I might be able to change some bad into good. Now, might is the operative word. So, why you want to pause here is because you need to ask a lot more questions. You need to see what realistically is possible, not what you want to have happen, but what realistically you can make happen. Don't wish cast, but actually ask, find out, because it could be an opportunity for you if you can make things work. But if reality says that probably can't happen, or can't happen for a very long time, then that might put you back into the no, I need to pass on this position. I hope this was helpful for you to have a framework to think about whether to accept a role that is not a great fit for you. My personal situation was I had been laid off and this role became available. I had many misgivings, I'll be honest, about the role. But I also was the person in the household that had the health insurance. And at the time, there were not a lot of alternatives. So that was my pressing issue to be covered by health insurance. The other thing, as I said previously, is the boss was going to be good. So I did start this job. Now, why this was a fortunate decision for me was because shortly after I started, I was diagnosed with cancer. Had I not had that health insurance, it would have been financially devastating for my family. Now, it panned out that a lot of the things that I thought were going to be problems with this role actually were problems with this role. And what I decided to do after I was finished with all my cancer treatments was I needed to find another position because this was not tenable for me for the long term, even though my boss was great. So I finished my cancer treatments at the end of May, started looking back again, and I started a new job in September. It didn't end up hurting my career. I ended up actually in a great place after this particular position, but it did take a year for me to kind of work through everything and get myself into a better place. So, in my situation, taking the job actually was very good for me because of the health insurance and the financial drain that would have happened. Now, I did not know that ahead of time, of course, but kind of using this format of how to think through things, it did make sense for me to go at that time. It also made sense for me to leave in about a year's time as well. So I hopefully this is helpful for you to think through. If you ever have any questions about what you should do, because this is something I do with my clients as we go through options and see what will work, I'm happy to do that with you. Contact me. You can go do that through my website.